So what's your dissertation on? Do you mind answering?
Yeah, so we're looking at a survey, a discrete choice preference assessment, basically looking at how to account for employee preferences in the workplace. So there's many like standing desk interventions that are out there, and a lot of other, accelerometer, Fitbit type studies, but nobody's really asking the workers before the study's implemented, like what the preference is. So
Yeah.
that could be an important variable. So it's going to be
and I think there's going to be a huge push for that in advance. I mean, in the coming years, because workplace health is so important, and it feeds into so many different areas, especially health coverage, right? Medical health coverage. And so employers are looking for ways to reduce premiums, to provide more proactive services instead of, reactive services. So who can help these employers set up these programs that get buy-in from their members, right? I mean, we have a program at work, but nobody uses it, and they can't figure out why. So, I mean, I have an idea why, but
you can't just give somebody a manual and expect people to just all of a sudden change their behavior. There has to be some contingencies in place and some oversight, and you gotta help people with it.
So when you
can't just set it and forget it. That infomercial, it's like, oh, we gave you this program, only 10 out of 100 people are using it. Well, what are the variables? And if you don't work on changing the variables, you're not gonna get health in the workplace.
So do you have in the consulting work that you do with people, and that graphic that you showed about the sugar consumption is just amazing and unbelievable, and I hope she feels great about herself cutting out all that sugar. But do you have do you have a part, like, do you have you meet with them regularly to provide feedback, or you have one-to-one time where you look at their progress, or how do you set yourself up when you
it's depending on the needs of the client, of course. If it's a more intense, so to speak, intervention, it would be meeting weekly. If there's less of a need, it would be meeting twice a month or once a month. So it's really just, it looks a little different because you're working with typical adults who can talk back to you, and they're pretty reliable. So for the sugar consumption person, that was, I believe that was weekly, like an hour a week for like 4 or 5 months. So you can already start to, think about what a valuable cost would be, for those type of services. So
how are you finding yourself received in the different fields? So not necessarily ABA. I mean, you're a big hit, and I just know that by, seeing you everywhere in the social media and the podcast, and the behavior analytic community has really embraced you, but you're starting to work with other fields. And so how's your reception?
I think it's been fine. I don't know. It's hard to judge like what your mark of success would be in another field,
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for me is you just have to continually put yourself out there and present to people that don't know your language and don't know your principles. And I'm doing that with the CrossFit community right now too. So I'm actually going to St. Augustine next week, which is an hour and a half away, just to deliver a free training on like, hey, here's some things I think can help you guys. And so it took a little work just to sell over the phone, just like, hey, I need your guys' attention for 45 minutes in the middle of the week. Can I have it? So I think I've been well received in that respect of, I know, going, from my earlier slide of, I do have a little bit of, sales and marketing experience behind me. So I do know how to kind of open a couple doors, which is super helpful. So that allows me to, I think, make a better impact into other fields.
Okay. And I think you said in your history you worked in the mental health field?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was just a like an entry level, bachelor's degree in psychology of like, hey,
Okay.
you're gonna be a case manager and go fill up. Basically, you saw a kid, and I was supposed to facilitate connections between school and parents, and like I had no clue why I was doing this. I didn't know what I was. There's no data. It was just fill out forms and codes, and
Right.
I guess I hate to say the term, just classic case management. That's
Yeah.
my job title, as a case manager, but there's no effective no effective outcomes being
Yeah. I think when you say a typical case manager, we all kind of have an idea of what that,
yeah.
we've run into that before. So do you have any, your favorites, like books, articles, or researchers, or things that are your like
Oh,
go-to top?
shelf.
Yeah. Do you want to zoom in over there? We can get a good snapshot. But what would you recommend for someone who said, hey, I really want to learn more, or what's a must-have go-to?
Related to what area?
Related to the research in
Oh,
behavioral health, sports, fitness, all of that.
I mean, outside of just a few, I don't say few, but there's more. Like there's, the research articles in Java are very good. Those are a good resource.
Okay.
I'd say for anybody that's like looking to kind of get started and interested in these types of things, a lot of Milton Berger's lab over the past 10 years has really done a lot of the heavy lifting as far as just pumping out, the video modeling and tech teaching in different sports and fitness areas.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it's his work is a treasure trove. They have worked with horseback riding, yoga, football, more of the sports side than what I've kind of focused on. Like
So
my lab.
how do you find that stuff? Do you just search Milton Berger Lab, or how do you?
It's just is once you get familiar with the research, just lots of trials of reading research. I mean,
Okay, so you kind of have to unravel it.
you just do a basic lit review. Just type in,
Okay.
go to Java, the website, and type in sports and fitness and health in Milton Berger. And
Okay.
if you go to Java and type in Milton Berger, you'll have 200 articles probably pop up, and
Yeah.
30 of them will be sports and fitness.
Can I ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
So I was curious, number one, how many clients have you served in the domain of sports and fitness?
Oh gosh, under like BehaviorFit, it's probably over like 10 now total. Like they come and go, based on need and everything. But I think, probably about maybe like 10 to 15 in some kind of fashion, whether it's 1 month onboarding, 6 months, I don't know, somewhere around there.
Okay. Has we see the successes, of course.
Yeah.
There have been cases where people have like come to you and haven't been able to achieve, the outcomes that they had sought in looking for.
Yeah, there's I have a client now where he's been my client for 9 or 10 months, and after about 5 months, he was on the upswing. But over the summer, we had a big downswing. So it's not always like go go go. There's ups and downs, and cycles of, loosely speaking, cycles of motivation where we can't identify what's going on. When you're a working adult, there's a lot of things going against you. But to answer your question, I have had clients that do experience not success. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I would assume that's the case. And I guess like kind of what I'm getting at it, I guess I'm curious about like, what are some of your ideas about like who ends up being successful and who maybe isn't able to achieve it? And I'm hearing that like there are some variables where it's just difficult to know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, that's the whole kind of aim of the the coaching. And so when I talk to people, it's like, yeah, well, we'll talk like an hour a week or every 2 weeks. And it's really just sorting through like somebody's chaotic life. You get to know them. You're just like, okay, what's going on now? Like the client who did the sugar thing, the reducing the sugary sodas, she was successful with that, but her physical activity, which I didn't show, didn't change as much. Her steps, she did have progress, but it wasn't as beautiful as those data were. Yeah. Excuse me.
Would you, one of the things that, in, kind of the mental health and integrated space that we're seeing now is like, we've got, of course, these adults that, might have like, pretty significant mental health, like challenges. Yet we're kind of like being charged with like, help keep this person out of the emergency room, help this person like reduce their, need for financial assistance, and, help them live a healthier life. And that's kind of like, that's a big challenge. But I think what you're doing has some potential answers for. And so I really appreciate the work that you're doing.
Yeah, it's science. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Science has potential. I agree with that. but thank you. Yeah.
But you're applying it to an important and socially significant challenge that.
Yeah. It's it does seem a little like nebulous when you first start thinking about it and figuring like, oh, how am I going to measure things? But once you get into it, it's it becomes second nature. But it is an exciting thing to be a part of, for sure.
So variables that you're measuring, I've seen steps, I've seen consumption of unhealthy consumables. What other kinds of variables are you interested in or studying?
Yeah, so it can be, anything and everything. So if you have steps, you can also measure, I have a running client, so we measure, we look at heart rate and pace and running distance. That's important for her. If you're looking at weightlifting, any type of sports movement can be the movement can be broken down into steps, and you can look at a task analysis, and you can look at percentage of steps completed, things like that. But for me, it's just so easy and basic to get steps and exercise time, and all of our devices track everything. So it's those are the low-hanging fruit. I've looked at the sitting time with the Fitbit and those the dots and all that. It's kind of like secondary measures, but the basics are usually pretty good.
So here's my last question, and then I'll let Michelle ask some more if she has some. But is there like a entry-level technology that you would say you found that like this is the bare minimum to be able to do take some good data on like health related variables?
Well, it just matters what the goal is. You can have all these devices in the world that measure everything, but if you don't know where to go first, then you can start there. So like with the food and the sugar, we use the MyFitnessPal app because that's what made sense for that individual. Again, that's what, a couple hours of talking to her, figuring out what would be the, the easiest response ever, things like that. So to recommend like one bit of technology, it's kind of hard to do, but if you're a runner and you have somebody that has a Garmin, the Garmin's probably going to be a good choice, And there's cool like video apps and stuff if you're looking at form, like Coach's Eye, things like that. There's plenty out there. So I would side more towards like, what's the person's goal, and then work backwards towards that.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Yeah. Those are cool questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, those are really good questions, Kyle. And there's so much new technology that comes every day out there. I'm sure you have to kind of stay on top of, the latest and greatest. And figure out how to apply it. Have you ever thought about making your own app?
I've thought about it, but I never did it.
It seems really hard. I don't know how you do that.
I think, I mean, before we kind of move on here, I think, Michelle, like you talked about, you wanted to ask about the data deluge and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It relates. Technology is always kind of changing and everything. I think it's always important to think about, like, why is this technology being adapted? From what I've learned, I've got a really good colleague in my lab that I shared office with. He's up on IT and all things technology based, basically. And it's like, what I've learned is through him is that, excuse me, like the tech folks, they're just making things constantly because they can. They never really ask why they're making it. So
Right.
yes, things will always come out and be new, but it's like, if you can't select a piece of technology and maintain it and use it over the long term, we need to be thinking about those issues, not like, do I need the new Apple Watch because it has GPS on it, just as an example. The real question is, okay, I'm going to use this, but what really needs to happen is I need to monitor somebody's behavior for every week for 3 weeks. Am I willing to do that? And that's the issue with like just general Fitbit wearables anyway, is that, you know, there's studies and blogs that talk about people throw them away after, 6 months, but it's like the person probably never asked themselves, am I willing to wear this watch and look at the steps every day for the next 3 years?
Right.
So that's just kind of my soapbox on it.
Yeah, and I agree with that so much, and that's why that data deluge that you talked about in your behavioral observations podcast interview really spoke to me, because there's like this push in every industry out there on just collecting all of this information, and data analytics are so important, and big data, and now how do we figure out what to do with all this data, when it's like, gosh, why do we even have all of it?
Yeah. The
It's
bigger
like,
issue
collect
is
everything and then we'll figure it out at the end, instead of having an intention.
it's more like you just need to solve a problem for somebody, and ABA and collecting data and putting on a chart is kind of the procedure.
Yeah.
And when you're worried about how things look like, and if I have the snazziest Excel spreadsheet, that doesn't matter if the person is still unhappy with your services.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So true.
Mic drop.
And we're out.
And we're right on time.
Yeah, and we're right on time for you. So I'm gonna let you go. Thank you so much for coming. I'm glad we had this.
I wish more people could join us.
And believe me, I'm gonna make sure that we send this out to all of our SIG members, because I think this was a great opportunity to get some good information from somebody who's actually walking the walk, right? People are always like, how do I break into it? Well, you are doing it exactly. So it's so wonderful to hear all of your ideas, and best of luck to you always. We're fans of yours. So if you ever need some groupies, just look us up.
Thank you. I'd be happy to. If you have a conference coming up, I'd be happy to come check it out if you need somebody to talk about something.
Yeah, we might be in touch. We might be in touch for sure.
Yeah.
I guess a note for people, if they watch this recording later, if you just feel free to, you didn't have a chance to Q&A with me, but you can email me.
Yeah.
My contact information was on this earlier slide, but go to BehaviorFit. If you really want to contact me, you can figure out how to do it. I believe it. But even for the three of you in the room, if you have other questions, feel free to email me or send me a message on social media. I'd be happy to keep the conversation going.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Can you email me a link of this at the end? Or,
I will, for sure.
I don't know how this works.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's new for me, so let me figure out how to do that, but I'll definitely send it to you.
Awesome. Well, it's good to meet you all, and we'll stay in touch.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah, see ya.